abbiamo in linea ora via Zoom la quarta serie di ospite oggi, Loretta Romeo, la seconda italo-aborigena per oggi, visto che facciamo uno special in occasione della NAIDOC Week 2026. Sono 50 anni di NAIDOC Week. Quindi grazie, buon pomeriggio Loretta. Thank you for joining us via Zoom.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely to see you at last. We've exchanged several emails. It's good to meet almost in person. So, NAIDOC Week, and I said you are director of the Tjindu Foundation. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly.
That's correct, Tjindu.
Tjindu. What is the Tjindu Foundation? What do you do there?
So the Tjindu Foundation is an Aboriginal community-controlled organisation in South Australia. We create opportunities for First Nations children and young people through culture, education and sport. Its purpose is to help young people build strong futures by strengthening cultural identity, supporting success at school, and developing leadership skills in creating pathways into employment and further education. So we work typically with year 10s, 11s and 12s at this stage, First Nations boys and girls or young people. And we support them through sport with AFLW and AFL Women's. And we also have two other programs, Tjindu Strong and Tjindu Foundation, for people that aren't interested in sport. So they still get the leadership opportunities through that.
Oh, very interesting, because Chris Surra, that we just talked to a few minutes ago, has this thing called the Stronger, Smarter Foundation. And he was talking about giving strength to the young Indigenous Australians by allowing them, well, first raising the expectations and not putting them into a category that has low expectations, but also allowing them to feel strength in their culture. Does that connect with what you're doing?
Yes, and what I think is really valuable about the foundation is that education isn't seen as separate from culture. It's a holistic program. The program's built on the belief that young people thrive when they are connected to culture, community and identity through the initiatives that we provide and the pathways.
So what sort of initiatives in practical senses? You said you focus on years 10 to 12, yeah?
At this stage, we would like to branch out to probably years 7, 8, 9 in the future, because that's typically where students become disengaged, especially Aboriginal students.
Yeah.
But some of the things we focus on in the program, for instance, is around nutrition, identity, self-determination, confidence, how to take care of yourself, financial literacy, all those sorts of things that some of us take for granted because we've either grown up with that support or we haven't.
Yes, and they're complementary to the academic aspects of schooling.
Exactly, and the students that are going through the program are still in school and they're achieving SACE points through the Tjindu program. So they go once a week to Tjindu and receive SACE credits, and they go to school. And it's a supportive environment, and if they're not attending Tjindu or school, then that's when we would get involved and support the wraparound support.
So help them, encourage them to participate and stay engaged.
Yes.
Okay.
And what's the barriers to that?
What barriers are there? You mentioned barriers.
Well, what's the barriers to somebody not attending school?
Yes.
Is it affordability? Parents don't have a car, they can't get the bus, there's no bus line, train, things like that. What are those barriers? And really dig deep to see if we can prevent them.
Yes, and often there are some very simple practical things that can get in the way from these bigger developments. Okay, yes. Now we're talking about this in the context of NAIDOC Week and 50 years of NAIDOC. What's the connection, or what's your feeling about the importance of this event?
I think it's crucial. It's a celebration of 50 years of, I think, really strong Aboriginal pride and culture, and the fact that we've got the oldest living culture in the world here in Australia is amazing that we can celebrate that. For me, I look at education being really important because it creates the opportunity to build confidence and And NAIDOC Week is really an invitation to learn and understand First Nations histories and achievements, rather than just simply observe them from a distance. And education helps all Australians in this process.
Yes, or education about Indigenous cultures. Now, when I only did primary school in Australia, and my recollection is that there was roughly zero content about the First Nations. Now, that was almost 100 years ago when I went to school, but I think it's changed a lot now. And if nothing else, information is much more readily available via the internet, etc. Are you helping in that sort of? It's a bit outside of what you've talked about, but educating us non-Indigenous about culture and language.
Definitely. I worked within the South Australian government for 8 years across 8 different agencies. And my role initially was around people and culture, but I did do a lot of Aboriginal affairs type roles. And part of my role in that was building cultural capability within the agency with non-Aboriginal people and building cultural safety for Aboriginal people within agencies, and educating, having tough conversations, asking questions, being open to those questions. That's the only way we learn.
Yes. Now, that concept of cultural safety, I can understand it, I think, indirectly from a migrant background, but what does it mean in this context?
I think it probably means the same as what you're thinking in your background. And coming from an Italian and Aboriginal background, I see a lot of similarities. But cultural safety is when you see people that look like you in other roles, in seniority, in other senior roles, doing education, doing training, learning and development. And you feel safe. You can bring your whole self to work because you feel that there's other people around you that are like you and you're valued and appreciated and accepted for who you are.
And it shouldn't be an issue, what your background is. It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. And, you know, Aboriginal Australians are some of the most marginalised people. Yep. And if we get it right, cultural safety for Aboriginal people, we get it right for everybody.
Yes, yeah. So now I've said you're Italian Aboriginal, and I guess as is mostly the case, the mother is the Aboriginal side and the father is the Italian side, with a name like Romeo. That's very obvious. So tell us a little about the two origins. What's your Aboriginal background, and then go to the Italianness in a second.
Yeah, sure. So I am so proud of both sides of my family, and I've come to realise that the Italian and Aboriginal mix is not so unusual. It's quite complementary. For my mum was born on the Point Pearce Mission on York Peninsula.
Okay.
So only one generation ago, and her paternal family were born on the Raucan Mission down near Victor Harbour, and we're also related to the Kaurna people. So 3 different communities that I'm part of, and I'm recognised as within those communities. My dad came to South Australia when he was 12 from Calabria, from Saderno, and came here with his mum and 3 siblings, and then 3 further siblings followed. Dad couldn't speak any English. He was enrolled in a private boys' school, St. Michael's, at 12 years of age, and really struggled because he couldn't speak the language. And he was at school for 2 years before leaving. And like my grandfather, my nonno, a very hard worker, was able to start with a traineeship in panel beating or crush repairing, depending on what state you're in. And he did that for his whole life and had his own business. So very hardworking man. Both my parents were. My mum was sent away at 13 years of age to learn to be a nurse in country hospitals so she could help support the family. And my dad, similarly, had 2 jobs while he was school, selling newspapers and collecting golf balls at North Adelaide to help support the family as well. So I come from very hardworking parents.
Yes, okay. Fine. Now, we spoke a bit of Italian with Chris Sarra, but I asked him also about his Aboriginal languages, and he said, unfortunately, even his mother was discouraged from speaking any Aboriginal language because of fear of being taken away. Is that your story? Do you have any Indigenous languages?
Very, very similar story. My To give you some context, my great-grandfather fought in World War I. His name was Arthur Thomas Walker, and he was born and lived on Raucan. He was one of the 19 Aboriginal men from Raucan that fought in World War I. It's the highest contingency in Australia.
Yeah.
And he had a son when he left. He lied to say he wasn't married, and he had a 1-year-old son. He subsequently died in France.
Okay.
So his son, who then was 3 years old, was taken from his mother due to policies at the time. There was a policy to say that if an Aboriginal lady was a single lady, that there was a neglect, want of a better word, a neglect clause. Yeah. So it was deemed that he couldn't stay with her. So he was put in a home at 3 years of age and then was raised by a white family. So he didn't know any of his background at all. He went to fight in World War II and luckily came home, but then since passed. So my grandmother, when my grandfather passed in 1962, my grandmother had 15 children to my grandfather. And to stop the children being taken away, she moved a lot every 6 and 8 months. And often she would be hiding the children in suitcases under the bed if people would knock at the door and things like that. So it was not really talked about, the Aboriginal language. I do know a lot of naughty words and words that I shouldn't say and things like that, which is quite funny when I'm with Aboriginal people and I can say that and it's quite funny. And then also my dad's upbringing of coming to South Australia and not being able to speak English and hearing racist comments towards him as well. He encouraged us not to talk about our Aboriginal side growing up because of what he experienced, and he knows what my mum experienced as well.
Yes, yes. Well, interesting as you're saying that, I'm reminded of a friend of mine who discovered that her grandmother was Aboriginal after she had passed, because they found some documents. And so the grandmother and her husband had kept it from the family.
Yes.
Completely.
Yes.
Okay.
I can understand that.
So, Italian. Have you visited Sudan?
So, I have not. Mm-hmm. I've been everywhere in Europe, but not Italy. Mm-hmm. But during COVID, just before COVID hit, we were going to take my dad back to Calabria. He had been back, but we wanted to do a family trip, and then COVID came around, and unfortunately, Dad struggled with dementia, and we had to put him into care. So we didn't go, but I'm taking my children next year.
Oh, lovely. Beautiful.
And
how are you going to communicate with your cousins?
I think I'll pick it up really quickly because I did study Italian at school, although my grandparents spoke a dialect, but I also studied Japanese and German at university.
Wow.
So I think I'll pick it up quickly. I've also bought a translator, and my daughter and I have started learning ourselves. She's 15, and I've told her that when she finishes high school, that we'll go to Italy for 2 years to live.
Oh, wow. That's a big call. Well, I follow a group on Facebook of expats living in Italy, and it's fascinating to see. And they're not necessarily, not necessarily people of Italian origin.
I'm very lucky though. I am an Italian citizen, and so are my children, which is fantastic.
So I didn't know this about the language. So tell us, what you studied languages at university. What was your degree?
I did a Bachelor of Arts at university, Japanese, German, political history, and then I did a Bachelor of Social Science, majoring in psychology and human resources.
Okay.
And then I've since done a Master's in Human Resources and Industrial Relations, and I'm currently doing my MBA.
Fascinating background.
Yes.
Interestingly, just yesterday I recorded an interview with an academic from the ANU. They teach about 20 odd languages, but it's a very special case. It's becoming rarer and rarer in Australia to have languages at university level.
Yes.
So why did you think of studying languages?
So the reason I studied Japanese is when I turned 14, I decided I wanted to be a flight attendant. Oh. And so I thought the best thing I could do is study an Asian language, because when I was at uni, you know, that was the way to go. And I liked the Japanese. It's quite pragmatic and the characters make sense to me, whereas when I've looked at other languages like Chinese, Mandarin or Cantonese, it didn't. And I really enjoyed it and loved it. I did it for 2 years at uni. And then I happened to apply for Ansett, if you can remember Ansett, the airline.
Yes, I certainly can.
Ansett International came about in 1995. It was Singapore Airlines owned and Australian owned. And the first routes were to Hong Kong and Japan. And I applied and I was successful in starting with Ansett International. So for 7 years, I flew with Ansett.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Japanese is on my list of potential sort of
amazing
dementia strategies, amongst other things.
And unfortunately, I've lost a lot of that language now. But during the time, I could do public address systems on the PA and talk to passengers. Mostly, it was an 80-90% Japanese passengers. So yeah, but I think I'll pick it up quickly, the Italian.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got so you studied Italian, so you've got some Italian, and you spoke to your grandparents in their local language, and that's fine.
Yes.
That's, I guess, the equivalent of the languages in the Indigenous languages in Australia. Well, okay, on this, so we've gone on a few tangents here, but what, I think quite a few or most of the Indigenous languages are either extinct or almost extinct in Australia. Is that issue somewhere on your radar, Tjindu?
Definitely. Not just in Tjindu, even when I worked within the state government, there was a real push for language speakers within departments who worked on country. But especially now, and I've noticed like Tjindu Aboriginal College support language learners and various others as well. So the language which is... So Raukan is in Nanagiri land, and Ramangiri is one area of Nanagiri, and they're actually reviving their language now. And the same is said for Ghana and Narungga. So luckily the three communities that I'm part of are reviving their language, and there's digital forms and things like that now that we didn't have available to us before. The other thing at schools now, children are often taught Aboriginal language. And my daughter's just started at NAIDOC College, which is at Woodville, and it's an Aboriginal community school, and she is learning the Ghana language there. And she knows a lot more about the Ghana, well, she knows a lot more about First Nations history than I did at that age.
Yes, yeah, so interesting. I think you mentioned Tjindu College. Jack Buckskin is or was associated. And he's got Italian background too.
Yes, and he's from Point Pearce, where my mum's from.
Oh, okay. So your daughter, so I'm guessing she identifies with both these cultures in her background?
Yes, she does. I've got a son and a daughter, and both do. In fact, my son is doing an apprenticeship with the federal government through a First Nations apprenticeship program. Yeah.
Now, Chris Sarah told me he's visited his family in Abruzzo 5 times. But your project of spending 2 years in Italy is fascinating. I think we should have another conversation just about that in future. So how far in the planning, in the ideation of this thing have you gone? What do you think is going to happen?
Okay, so my daughter's got year 11 and 12 to go. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog. My work can be done remotely. At the moment, I work for a company in Sydney, and I work remotely here in Adelaide, so I could work anywhere. And we do have offices in the UK and other parts. So I would allow my daughter to take 2 years off and look to work in Italy and learn the language and experience the culture, and myself at the same time.
That's beautiful. And I mean, I kind of did. I did all my secondary education in Italy and then came out again. It wasn't always easy, but it's an important part of the education that you can, and formation of the that your daughter can do. Can have.
Definitely.
And, wow. Okay. Well, I have to go because the program's finishing. But I think we want to pursue some of those issues you've brought up. And thank you again. Thank you for helping in this NAIDOC special and for the work you do in the Tjindu Foundation.
Thank you. Ciao, Antonio.